Hi. Okay, welcome to the interview of George Fernandes. He is running for the IDHA. We are super happy to have him running. Due to other reasons, it's just me interviewing Loretta Bradfield. So we're going to go ahead and get started pretty quick here. We're going to start with the first question. When did you first learn about drum horses and what drew you to them?
So I don't remember my age. I know roughly I was in high school, so I don't know, 16 to 18. I used to go up to auctions with my dad for horses, and we would always end up with quarter horses, but there was a couple Clydesdales that came through. And I said, oh, Dad, maybe we should get one of those draft horses. And he was like, no, it's going to cost too much to feed them with hay. And he's like, they're not very nice tempered anyway. And I was like, oh, okay. So there was a gypsy farm that I went to shortly after that meeting, or shortly after that auction. And it was located like an hour north of me in Connecticut. And at that gypsy farm was the first time I got to meet a gypsy, and great to me, very docile, really loved them. But we had ponies and I didn't really want a pony. And so we went to the, I think it might have been the equine affair, but don't quote me on that. It was some sort of event, and we saw a drum horse. And when I saw the horse from a distance, I kept looking because I couldn't tell if it was a Clydesdale or if it was a gypsy or if it was, what it was, because the Tobiano pattern on the horse was so distinct, which made me think it was a gypsy, but its height was different. So nonetheless, I got to meet one and I just fell in love. That was it for me.
Well, the next question would be, how long have you owned drum horses?
So I got my first drum horse in September or August of not last year, but the year before. So almost 2 years I've owned drum horses.
Awesome. How long have you been a member of the IDHA?
So I've been a member of the IDHA since the beginning of 2021. It took me a little while after getting my first horse, Prim, to really kind of get my bearings and get into an association. And when I finally transferred the paperwork over and got everything finalized is when I went ahead and got my lifetime membership.
Awesome. So the next question would be, what horse experience do you have that will be helpful to the IDHA, i.e. shows, competitions, other boards, trainers, long-term breeders, judges, etc., etc.?
I think what will be helpful to the IDHA is the fact that I don't have as extensive of experience or training with, drum horses, but more so just with horses in general. So growing up, I had, well, I guess we'll go even farther back than where I was thinking. So my father is from Portugal, and he moved to the United States when he was young. His whole family moved here, and they used to live on a huge farm. And so horses were really their biggest means of financial gain when they would take care of the fields. And with that, when we moved to America, we were young, and my dad made sure that we grew up with horses. Now, the purpose of the horse was really different for us living here in Connecticut. It was really just pleasure, trail rides. I grew up with an autistic cousin who the horses were really a sort of therapy for him as well. So my background with horses really comes from a variety of different purposes, which I think is different than, you know, a normal show home or a trail ride home. You know, my purpose of the horse since I've been young to now has really just been pleasure. And I think that that's important because sometimes we can lose sight of the reason why we have a horse. And yes, it's about competition and showing off the horse and what they're able to do, but also at the end of the day, it's about what you're there to do for the horse too, not just what it's there to do for you. So I think I can bring a nice different perspective and background to the IDHA.
Well, trail riding is definitely a huge thing I do with my horses, so I can vouch that drum horses are amazing for that. I know this is a good question for you. What business type experience and qualifications do you have that will be helpful to the IDHA?
Growing up, my parents had an Italian restaurant, and while at its first sight, people wouldn't think that that's very helpful. We were really busy, right? So like tons of patrons and complaints and, you know, good topics would come up as well. But, you know, it takes a certain type of person to know how to talk to people with respect and with compassion. And since that Italian restaurant, which we no longer have, I went off to law school and I am currently an attorney. So not only do I feel that I can bring a personal aspect to the IDHA, but also a professional side that is necessary with any organization or association. And should there be a need for something, of course, I would be there to help.
I love how you're not just spearheading with, I'm an attorney who graduated from the super fancy school. So, all right. So, let's do the next one. How much time each week and month are you able to dedicate towards IDHA projects?
Well, it depends who's watching this, right? So I tend to, I'll rephrase. Drum horses are a passion of mine at this point, right? So even though I work a 9 to 5, which is probably more than a 9 to 5, I'm always thinking about these horses and mine at home and how I can do something better for them, how we can be better as an organization, you know, what kind of shows can there be for people who are home like myself, who don't really get to have the time to travel to another state to show their horse, you know. So I think I have the time to devote, as we all do, to anything we care about.
The next question would be, what personal experiences do you have that you think would be helpful to the IDHA? So they put on this things you may have done that would have developed skills that are useful, not necessarily a result of employment. So public speaking, coaching, club church leadership, hobbies, etc.
So I've done a variety of things throughout my life. Some are a little unique, which why not? I did folklore, Portuguese folklore dancing for a large portion of my childhood, which, you know, you wouldn't think has much of any benefits for an association like a drum horse association. But I think that being able to be versatile, being able to be put in any given situation and end up shining, you learn a thing or two, right? So I've done that. I've worked at various restaurants. I've held managerial capacities there. I've been a part of arbitrations and mediations where I'm required to be objective and look at situations from both sides of both parties and try to come to resolutions. Not that there really should be so much conflict within an association, but I'm sure there are times when it would be necessary. Aside from that, I did compete in horse shows when I was young. We had local horse shows, so I got my ribbons somewhere in this house of first place in barrel racing. I think even younger than that, the best walk. So we did that. What are some other things that I've done? I don't know. I think that would be roughly what I could think of at this time.
So, what personal projects, if any, have you been thinking about that you feel will be a benefit to the IDHA? So, anything that you specifically want to focus on and or develop in the future if it being on the board of the IDHA?
So is the question personal agenda? Can you rephrase the question or ask
What
again?
personal projects, if any, have you been thinking about that you feel will benefit the IDHA? So, like for me, it was working on trophies and marketing and be able to update logos, all that kind of stuff. So, specific things that let's call it your heart project for the IDHA that you're like, well, if I got out, I'd like to see this happen, or I'd like to do this, or I'd like to help develop this.
Right. So essentially, I think that something that I've been thinking about is really just transparency, right? So not to say that the board hasn't been transparent, but how do we maximize involvement of its members? So what I have been thinking about is how do you streamline meetings in a way that won't be disruptive, but will still be informative? So is there a way to provide a link to members to watch meetings without having the contribution of members, throughout the middle of a thought? I think that would be helpful, and I think it would be important. And it doesn't have to be every meeting, but I think that members should be able to know what's going on behind the scenes and feel more involved, because involvement is really what brings up the member base. And if we can bring up a member base and get more people to back the IDHA, then I think as an association, it'll only grow. And of course, that's very macro, right? When we talk about that, we're thinking like, oh, of course, you get more members, you can grow an association. But I think there's ways to do that, and I'd like to try to find them.
All right. So, what board positions have you been thinking you would be interested in filling? If you want, I can tell you some of. Do you need me to say the board positions?
I don't think so. So one thing that I forgot to mention in a prior question, which I should probably hold to the end, but it ties in. So I was also on the a local bar association. I was a member of a local bar association. And while I was on that bar association, I started as the secretary. From secretary, I ended up as the treasurer. From treasurer, I was at the vice president. And then I didn't go on to be the president of that association because I ended up getting a job with an insurance company that took me out of the town, allowing me to continue being in that group. So with that being said, being on a board isn't something that I'm unfamiliar with. I know the Robert's rules very well, and I'm not going to say that I'm perfect in any way, shape, or form. Just because I've partaken on a board, it doesn't mean I know everything. So I'm not trying to give off that impression, but I think that it's helpful, right? I can serve in any capacity to really any job. If I needed to do a show position, I'm sure it's probably not my strongest point, but I could figure it out. Help create shows, get them up and running. If I needed to do promotions, I could help with marketing, whatever form that would be. If I needed to be secretary, I would keep copious notes and make sure that they were sent out. If I were to be vice president, I would always help with the president, facilitate whatever was needed to be done. I'm very much a team player, and I really think I could serve anything.
feel like you answered the next question. It's why do you feel that you would be good for these positions? I think you already answered that. Do you concur? Yes. Okay.
No,
You're good. If you want to say something else, go ahead. Okay. So the next question would be, which position do you feel would you not be the best fit for you? I think you kind of already said shows would be the more of your weakest one. But
sure, it would be challenging, but I've never been one to shy away a challenge. So
well, this one's supposed to be which one would you feel would be the least fit for you?
Sure. Yeah, then I would have to say shows.
Right. Okay. So are you willing to fill any position or work on any project, even if it's not your preferred position or project?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. Many of the positions would benefit from committees working on them. Are you willing to and able to assist in multiple committees? There could be the possibility of extra committee meetings at this time.
Yeah, I do think that it's important to have committee meetings. And I think it's important to understand fundamentally why, right? So you have these larger groups where in a normal meeting, you get the gist of the arguments out and it's more of yes or no decisions. But in committee meetings, it gives you the ability to talk and group and really get deep thought into why and what's the process behind something that might be implemented, right? So I think they're important and I think I would definitely be involved.
I think with the bigger board and opening up another seat, that is something that we'll see happening this year. So
Yeah,
why do you want to be a board member with all the added responsibility?
that's a great question. I've asked myself that myself. I think the reason being is because I'm just a passionate person. And with how invested I am with the drum horses, I think that what better of a way to help the greater good of the breed than to be a part of the board of the association. And I don't want it to be misconstrued that I don't think anybody should be part of the board because a personal agenda. I think it's important to be a part of a board to help the greater good of everyone. So I think that I can do that. And I can also call out those who don't.
Most positions also require the person responsible coordinates and passes information to other members on a regular basis. Are you able to work one-on-one with other board members to ensure that all information is coordinated fully?
Yeah, I think so.
Do you have the tools that will enable you to perform your duties?
I do. I think what's the biggest thing to help you with your duties is a laptop. I got that. I have a phone. I have 2 feet. I'm good.
Awesome. 2 feet. Oh, sorry. Okay. How would you handle a situation where your vote doesn't achieve the result that you originally wanted?
I would ask questions to try and understand if my perspective was skewed in any way, or if I had taken a position that was so contrary to that was voted, to understand why it didn't pass. And I think that anyone should do that. I don't think that I would continue to push it unless there was a need or, kind of the members were speaking that it was important, then I would continue to push in some way or fashion. But I think just understanding why there's such a divide would be what my main goal or focus would be.
Last question. Sorry. Okay. Are you aware of any potential problems that would prevent you from completing your term or assigned duties?
I'm not aware of any problems. Nope.
Awesome. Thank you so much, George. We appreciate you interviewing for the IDHA positions. The next couple of weeks, we'll be posting these after the last interview. So you're the second to last interview. So we have one more left. And if this would be the time, if you have any other comments or anything that you wish to say that we haven't already covered, this would be the time to do it.
Yeah, so just a quick synopsis on who I am. George Fernandes here. I live in Connecticut, and I currently have 4 drum horses. I have 4 mares, and they are 3 Tobianos and 1 solid bay. She is, well, there's Bianca, who's a Galway Warrior daughter. Then there's Lexi, who's my F1 import from the UK. Then there's Daphne, who is an F2, and she's actually Lexi's daughter. And then there's Prim, and Prim is an F1 who I got from Lauren McNulty. And my other 3 horses I got from Rebecca McGeever about, I don't know, January of this year. I got those 3. And I started a breeding program that I hope to get my feet wet and see really how it goes. But I don't intend to be a fly-by-night breeding program. I think this is something that I've heard from a lot of people happens often. And I'm here to show that I'm going to be around for the long haul. But you know, it's important that people understand, like yourself, I care, right? I want to do this just because I had a choice in my life after my father passed away to either get rid of the farm or to make it what I wanted. And before my father had passed, he had said, you know, it wasn't a place for us to get draft horses. It was going to be too time consuming. It was going to be too much work. And I really took it upon myself to make sure that if I was going to keep this farm, that I was going to do what I was most passionate about. So here I am before you, of course, applying to be on the board. And I think that I can make a difference, right? But yeah, I would appreciate your vote. And if you ever have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm very approachable, at least I hope. And you can find me on Facebook. It's Yorgos Fernandes. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for doing everything and taking the time out of your day.
No problem. Thanks, Loretta.